Welcome back, or welcome to Grateful and Full of Greatness. I'm your host, Mark Glissini. On this podcast, I sit down with guests who, in my opinion, live their lives with the pursuit of greatness in mind. This platform allows me to discuss and to explain strategies that go into reaching peak performance. This is episode number 10. My guest is head men's lacrosse coach at Yale University, Andy Shay. He has been a collegiate lacrosse coach for over 2 decades, and exactly 2 years ago, in 2018, he was awarded the Division I Coach of the Year after leading the Elis to their first national championship win. Within the world of lacrosse, he is recognized as one of the best head coaches in the sport today. From 2013 to 2016, I played under Coach Shay and won 3 Ivy League championships together within 4 years. He understands and teaches the process of growth, cultural development, and team success, as well as anyone on the planet. Through his empathetic servant leadership, he shows boys how to become men and a group of individuals how to strive together like a family. I remain endlessly grateful for Coach Shay's influence in my life, and I'm extremely excited to have him join me on here today. Coach, I appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Happy to do it, Mark. Thank you.
So one of my favorite quotes is people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. This is never more true than with you and Yale's men's lacrosse. How would you describe your approach as a coach and as a leader to young men?
Uh, that's pretty broad for me, buddy. I think that over the years I've kind of changed in how I do things and um, how I've approached this whole thing. I think that for the way we do things at Yale, we kind of have a singular goal in what we want to do and what we expect. Our guys to aspire to. And it's always present in the process of recruitment, and so I think that when you do that, you get guys that go into the process and go into the program with both eyes open, and they are aligned with your values in terms of what they want to do. And I can remember back to your recruitment, when we talked about what we wanted to do long term, and my goal with you was to challenge you because I knew that that's what you would want. So I think that when you committed, we had one Ivy League title. I think that was the only one, now that I think about it. And since then we've obviously won a number of them, and large part to your play and leadership. So I think for me, it's just getting guys here that really want to set the bar a little bit higher, I guess, and then just doing it every day. I really don't think of it in terms of leadership, to be honest with you, and I don't know why. But when I hear those phrases and when I hear people talk about it, I feel kind of uncomfortable because I don't really. I don't know if I view myself as that, and maybe it's because of the guys that I coach that are so high achieving and so impressive. But yeah, I think guys, that come to Yale make it easy for me, maybe.
I love that. And one thing that you brought up really early on in that response is the fact that perhaps your leadership starts from the recruiting process, even before they walk through the door. What are some factors that you're looking for in a recruit? I still remember being recruited and sitting across from you for the first time, and my heart rate was elevated because you were jacking me up and getting me ready to play, and we were in a library, so not the right place to get excited. But what's some of the factors that you're looking for in the recruit, if that's where it all starts?
Well, it is. It's a we talk about it all the time, and it's well documented to this point that we look for toughness and we look for grit and all that, and um, we call it anecdotal, whereas you talk to any coach about a kid, they're going to say, yeah, he's really tough, and but we want to hear a story. You know, for instance, you were one of the leading scorers in the state of New Jersey in a 2-year-old high school program, and that didn't make much sense to anybody. Once you peel back the layers, you see, like, the things that you did to get to that level. Um, so I think that, you know, in as much as that's why we put ourselves in the position to recruit those guys, is we want to hear stories, um, about their toughness, about their commitment, about their grit. And lately that's getting harder and harder for coaches to produce, especially in the club lacrosse age. These coaches don't necessarily see these kids in other sports or in, you know history class or whatever else. So,
Right.
those are the moments that we try and get to the high school coach and just say, hey, tell me more about this kid and where he overcame adversity. And it doesn't have to be physical. It doesn't have to be, you know, it can be, a mental thing. So, that really is that's the first marker, is, how tough are they? How mentally tough are they? Um, and we want to make sure that we don't settle on that at all. And so, once that is kind of settled, we, bring a guy to campus and show him campus. And, we don't, as you might remember, we don't really talk about the degree at all, and that's probably, I don't know. I don't know if it's irresponsible or maybe arrogant, however you want to look at it, but, we have an ability to do that. So it's like, okay, it's never mentioned, and it's almost a given. And then the way we recruit from there is we challenge them and say, and we talk about. I still remember the meeting in the library. We sat down and I said, we want to win 4 Ivy League titles, and we wanted to make sure that you knew it was going to be a huge challenge for us, but we needed somebody that wanted to hit that challenge head on. And with you, Mark, it was easy because I kind of knew, I knew how to kind of rev you up. I knew that if I challenge you, that you'd be like, you know, tell Mark Lucini he can't do something, it'll probably get done in the next, month or so. So that was a thinly veiled, you know, effort on my part.
Fair enough, and I appreciate that. And one of the things about stories is there's no great story without a great problem. And one of the probably most pertinent question you can ask an individual when you want to learn something in any given craft is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? Do you mind taking us through your evolution through your coaching years, and kind of what is something or multiple things that you didn't know, that you know now that you didn't know when you were first getting started, or along your story throughout coaching?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's when I first got into coaching, my father told me to. His advice to me was to keep it simple, stupid. That the old acronym. And when you're really young in coaching, when you're 20 something years old, um, you want to solve it with your brain, and you want to create a mousetrap that no one has created before, and you want to put all your youth and energy into it. Um, and you have all this hubris, and as you get older, you realize that it's the simple stuff that matters more. It's the fundamentals. And I know you've heard me say that word a billion times at this point. Um, and it's amazing how, it doesn't take much, you know, the, to you can't reinvent this thing at this point. And, um, just making it about the fundamentals and about getting better every day. I can remember when I first started coaching at the University of Delaware. I spent so much time into scouting, trying to figure out the opponent, and without any understanding that once you get out on the field, you're not going to remember what the coach wrote on page 7 of the scouting report. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it just seems like so much. I look back on it, and it's as a coach, who spends all his week working really hard to try and figure out what they're doing. Um, it's really hard to withhold that from your team and say, I just want you to get better from Monday to, let's say, Thursday. And then we'll start putting stuff in on Thursday, and Friday.
Yeah.
or maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's really hard to not say, you know what, we're just going to prepare for everything for that whole week. When I got to be a head coach, it was totally my call on how to do it. So it was like, okay, we're gonna we're gonna recruit as best we can. When I first got the job at Yale, I couldn't get the very best guys. Um, so if I could go back in time to talk to myself and say, listen, man, you might want to get these guys better rather than teach them that the opponent's man up play one last time. So
Right.
I think that once I figured out to worry about getting the team better, um, that things just started to change dramatically. It's just it's the compound effect. As I've told you that that book has had a huge effect on me. Is that if you get a little bit better over the course of 75 practices, then it really won't matter going over the other man up play. And it's just such a leap that so many people can't make. So many coaches cannot make. And it took me, it took me, till I was maybe 30, 39, 40 years old to figure it out. I'll be 50 this summer. So it's pretty, once it got through the dense skull that I have, I'm not letting go of it now.
Right.
So,
Well, what comes to mind when you say that is uh, all throughout the week is thinking time, and then when the game starts, it becomes trusting time. And if you're trying to think and act at the same time, there's no such thing, or at least not at a high level.
no, it's too
Compound
fast.
too way too fast, right? But I would say the amount of preparation you did for all those years, maybe the nitty gritty X's and O's, looking into scouting, it probably allows you to make snap judgment nowadays at a
No
quicker
doubt.
level. Yeah,
No doubt.
at a
And,
quicker
and,
level.
and I'm getting to the point where I'm seeing things, and, I can reference, you know, well, that looks like they're doing this from this team this many years ago. So
Right,
I'm dating myself every single time.
right.
Um, but yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's definitely, you realize that you forget as you get into your 20s and 30s, you forget that as a player, you don't have time to react, and this is for
Yeah.
lacrosse. This might be very different for another sport, for football or whatever. I don't know, but for the sport of lacrosse, which is, in terms of preparation, a lot like basketball and a little bit like football, I would say. Yeah, I think you got to find that sweet spot of getting guys better and putting in positions where they can react and make a good play.
I was talking to Dr. Molinaro about this, and he talks about lacrosse as an open sport as opposed to a closed sport, where gymnastics and golf, for example, are the closed sport in which the player themselves initiates the play, whether it's the start of a routine or a swing at the golf club, at the golf ball. And then for lacrosse and the other open sports, there's a whistle that starts it, there's other plays moving around, and you have to be more active. So in
Right.
those type of game, and those are the ones I've always played, football, basketball, and lacrosse, you see all this hierarchical thinking coming into play through just your reaction time. Now, every bulldog who has played for you knows your obsession with the word process.
Right.
You rarely even talk about winning in the same way you rarely talk about the diploma when they step on campus, just because it's the destination we all want to get to, but there's no means in talking about it. Like the probability of the outcome we want increases when we let go of the need to have it. So what does the process mean to you, and what do you mean every single time you say stick to the process?
Yeah, I mean, it can take so many forms, right? Just like when we say the word one, that's means so many things. But the process is for the team itself. In the off season, when you're doing individual drills, you're getting yourself better every single day. In the first part of our practice, you're doing individual drills to get yourself a little bit better that day. Um, when we implement certain team drills, those are process driven drills, which are, we're just trying to add layers of expertise um, in as many small increments as we possibly can every single moment, every single day leading up to, the game. And then once the components of the game are the process. So, in a game, a process is the opening face-off. It's the first ground ball. It's the multiple acts of doing things right, um, throwing the ball hard, um, being vocal on offense, being vocal on defense, being in the right spot on a clear. I mean, you probably can remember. It's just like the one thing we have to worry about right now, guys, is just be in the right spot on the clear. And then how many times are we not? It's like we look at the film on Monday and it's like that somehow is so hard. Guys just drifting and, as we've said many times, like an escaped mental patient running around out there. But, I think that being in the correct spot, especially like on the clear, it's it's amazing how hard it is. But that is the
Right.
process. And, if you're a defenseman and you're running up the field and you got the ball and that there's going to be a guy right in that spot and you hear something and you can throw it there with trust. That's the process taking over for you. So, I think the clear is something because it's team encompassing. I think that's something that we talk about a lot because, it has everybody. It's a 10-man operation. So, one guy's in the wrong spot, it screws up everybody. But just that subtle, having your heels to the sideline at that spot, in the right spot. And of course, it's never perfect, but that's what you're chasing, is doing that right. Um, so the clear becomes a metaphor in my eyes, and I've said it maybe too many times at this point. It becomes a metaphor for everything else: being in the right spot on offense, having proper footwork, um, you know, doing the right thing, touching inside on defense, like all the things that we talk about.
Right. And I think it's with things that are coming to mind in us talking about how they're so simple to do and why can't it happen every single time. I think when it comes to the mental game, you can't expect to be 75 degrees and sunny between the ears when your heart rate's through the roof and the pressure's on and you're gripping your
Right.
stick a little bit tighter. And it might not make sense when it's a nice, beautiful day out in New Haven and you're getting yelled at to get your feet to the end line or to the sideline or wherever it is. But the reason you do it so many times in a row is to get to that place where not that you get it right, so you can't get it wrong, so that you just
Right.
happen to be there when
Right.
the lights are on. Right.
And that's, you say that it's as we get older as coaches, it's been a long time since we had to do it with our elevated heart rate. So for us, we can't really empathize anymore. Like
Right.
you're 150 beats per minute, and I can't believe that you can't get there. But if I had to go back and coach myself, I'd probably cut myself, but B, I probably wouldn't be able to handle it because I wouldn't. It's not. It's easy for me to say, not as easy for me to do.
Right. But there is something about your authenticity as coaching. I always believed there was a slight possibility that you might go get on that line and show me how to do it, and that was enough for me to go do it,
No,
do
no,
it,
just a
do it to the
shadow of
nth
a doubt.
degree.
Yeah.
Just a shadow of a doubt. But one of the things I've always loved about you is how you coached me. You touched about it earlier, and maybe it was even before you started coaching me when you recruited me. I knew that you were going to challenge me. This is something that in the coaching realm, especially at the high level, that's a touchy subject. But how do you flirt the line between pushing a player too hard and challenging them and knowing when to back off?
Uh, I don't know. I think that for me, it's always been a fluid process. I try and connect with every guy as much as possible. And I think that we expect our guys to be in the office a great deal, and we call it the barbershop, hanging out and talking. And I think that there's a great deal of trust that develops in those moments. And it's something that we work to cultivate as much as possible. We have guys that don't, it's not easy to come in the office all the time, and we want to make sure that guys feel like they always can. And um, we'll notice certain years where I think your junior year, we felt like guys weren't coming in that much, and we made sure that we um, pulled guys in or whatever. So I think that those moments where we can kind of cultivate that, and like I said, this is a constant failure. We've got 45 guys that we have to somehow connect with any way we can. And you got a lot of mouths to feed. You got a lot of babies you got to love. It's truly, it's probably not, it's not possible. So, but in our effort, knowing that we might fail with every guy, at least we can hopefully connect with as many guys as possible. And maybe we're not failing as much as I think, but so relative to that, if we can have a human aspect and have a relationship with a young man, that's authentic and real, and then we can push him to the point where um, that trust, he's going to rely on that trust in us and the back end. So um, it's something we've always tried to do. I think that we could, you can rip a guy as much as you want. If he knows that deep down you really care about him.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not saying we're perfect at it or whatever, but that's something that we tried to do. I've said it, forever, that I learned the importance of this when I've always think I was, I'd like to think I was pretty good at it, but I think I learned the importance of it when the admissions process at Yale was different, because when I got hired, we weren't getting, 10 or 11 guys a year. We were getting 7 a year.
Mm,
And very quickly I realized if two of these guys quit, we're not going to be able to field the team. So, I got to engage every guy, no matter their talent level, and
sure.
that's the hardest part. Some coaches really, they want to coach the best guys more. The best guys don't need to be coached. You know what I mean? It's the guys who maybe struggling with some certain things, they
Mm,
need more.
yeah,
And once again, this is something that I have personally failed at, a lot. But in the course of the season, you know, I'm going to interact with the starters way more than I am the guys who aren't going to play.
sure.
And that's where it gets really difficult to manage, because you go a couple days and you're like, I haven't talked to this guy at all.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And he doesn't play. I mean, it's, you played, you started 4 years, and that's not easy to do, but it's almost harder to never play over 4 years and still say, you know what, this is what I'm about. You know what I mean? And we've had plenty of guys like that we try and just say, we hold, you've been there, we try and hold them higher than the guys that have played 4 years.
Well, they certainly are, and they certainly are. I think just the tenacity you can learn from those guys, the respect. The word that kept coming up in your response there was the word trust, and how do you develop that trust? And I think the answer is communication. It's listening. I'm reading the book. The students are watching, and it's not necessarily when you're in the classroom setting or in the film room that most of the coaching is happening. It's that barbershop mentality, right? That
Right.
like those little spaces on the side that they're going to being heard, they're being a part of it. Everybody has a role. Everybody has their thing that they do on the team. And once you start that communication, no matter where it is, not just in the classroom, in the film room, but you have that communication, that's going to lead to the trust, and then that leads to undying commitment. Uh, I debate with my mentors all the time in applied psychology the most important element to excellence: awareness, belief, curiosity, desire, empathy, faith, grit, all these different things that come up as the most important, but something that goes hand in hand with what you were talking about as a listening coach and being able to communicate in the barbershop is I feel like you have insatiable curiosity. You have just an eagerness to learn about your players, an eagerness to grow as a coach, and no matter what pedestal you're put on as a coach, even as you talked about earlier, you don't see yourself that way. You see yourself more of a student, both to the player that you're coaching and to the game itself. Where would you say that came from? Your curiosity, your willingness to learn, your eagerness to learn. Was there influences in your life early on, or is that something you picked up later on?
I've always been, yeah, I've always been very curious. I don't know, I don't know how or why. My parents told me I was a very inquisitive young man before I knew what that word meant. Um, you know, I, I I could read an encyclopedia and find it interesting. You know what I mean? Just open to something. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah,
just, and growing up, I used to do that. Like, when guys my age everyone had like a huge, you know, 26 huge encyclopedias, and you just flip it open to start reading about, a country in South America or whatever. You know, I'm the guy in the family that's in our family. Maybe it's because we have small children that can do well in Jeopardy and that type of stuff. Um, but I've definitely, with respect to coaching, I think I just want to get better. You know what I mean? I want to constantly try and get better, and I want to win as many games as I possibly can, and whatever that looks like. When my career is over, I want to be proud of it. So I think that where I am now, I think I have not scratched that itch enough, and I don't know if I ever will. So it's definitely it's definitely an issue. So I've one of the things that I've done, interestingly enough, in this pandemic is I've taken, I always have my notebooks every year.
Absolutely.
I had 17 of them, and sometimes they leak into another year, so it's like 2 years in one or whatever. I had 17 of them in my office, and it's one of the last things I took out of my office before they shut the building. I scanned all 17 notebooks, and I'm indexing the whole thing. So
Oh my gosh.
I'm looking at, like, from the before 2000, like that type of stuff. And the amazing thing is that I just keep coming back to the same stuff, but um, it's been an incredibly informative process. Looking at the things that I wrote down, the dumb ideas I had, the good ideas that I forgot about, and the recurring ideas. So it's been pretty interesting. I got a huge PDF document that I'm currently indexing, trying to figure out how to order it and how to quickly go to stuff.
Yeah, and I love that, and then you're able to sift through just by you having all that information, what's still relevant, what was I even thinking in this year and this part of the different notebook, and, it
I,
comes to
I actually
mind.
spoke to Jack Emmer the other day, who's he's a Hall of Famer, Army coach for however many years. At one point, he was the winningest coach in NCAA history, and he said that he has, in his basement, he has all these notebooks that he has yet to look at.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he said that some of them have water damage, so he's worried to go down there and take a look at it. He said someday I might do it. I said, Coach, I bet you could find someone to do that. I said I'd do it for free to crawl inside his brain,
Oh, so true.
over the course of the last however many years. So
It's like a personal diary,
yeah,
honestly.
totally, totally. So
So, in developing all these different things throughout the years, what comes to mind is those 17 years you've been at Yale, and you care so much about Yale Lacrosse and your team and your players. How do you invest time outside of it all? How much time would you say are you spending or investing not thinking about Yale Lacrosse or your profession?
I think about it all the time. I think about it. Um, my son and I were going to driving to play frisbee golf the other day, and I was explaining to him how I had I did a coaching through cancellation thing about old. You remember the old 54 drill where you got the fuzzy line and guys got to ride and all that
Yes,
stuff. It's like
yes, yes.
so I told him that I had figured out a way to make that one a little bit better. And he
Did he
was
give
just
you
like,
feedback?
he doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He's like, great, that's awesome. Can we go play frisbee golf now? So, um, but I'm just driving with my son, spending time with my son, and I'm just like, and it just kind of pops in my mind. Pops in my mind all the time. But the amazing thing is, dude, it's still like it's the simple
Mm,
things.
mm.
It's not a eureka moment, like, inventing anything. It's like, oh, if I just did this, like, very often it comes back to, I'm such an idiot. How come I didn't think of this before? You know?
What's coming to mind is, when I was talking to my character coach, Ben Ives, one of the main takeaways I've taken away from him is stop searching for, affirmation and search for information. So stop looking for things that you already believe in, that already are going to push your dogma down the road a
Hmm.
little bit further, and look for information, right? To contrast against what you already been doing, what you've already been thinking, and that's going to make you a better person, a better individual, and a better leader, because you'll be able to say, you know what, I used to think that was true too, but now that's not true, and because of this reason. So whether we're talking about your 17 notebooks or you having that eureka moment with your son, it's all about kind of searching for new information rather than affirmation that no, this 54 drill is the
Right.
best, that it can't get better, and not, and getting that kind of confirmation bias that that's the only way to do something.
That's what, I tell my staff all the time is you don't want somebody to yes you, you know what I mean? You want somebody to challenge you to a certain extent. You're not going to get work done after a while, and provided that they can, bring the right content. It was, the I'd heard that Abraham Lincoln filled his cabinet with people that he hated, that he didn't want, that he knew he would disagree with him, just because he wanted to make sure he had enough of a challenge of everything he was doing.
Right. I saw
So,
that a lot in Winston Churchill, The Darkest Hour, too. It's the same methodology that he wants people to challenge him. Uh, you've had so much success in the recent years, and perhaps this question is a little bit more complex than the simplicity that we've been talking about. But you've also had some down years in the past, whether it was at Yale or otherwise. What, in your opinion, separated those winning and losing teams, if you were to point to a few factors?
um, yeah, I think that I think at Yale, but my evolution at Yale, I think, is, I wish it didn't take me as long as it did. I think there were some other factors, but I think that it took me a long time to let go of those things that we spoke about. And and when I get a chance to talk to guys that were on the teams that didn't win like you guys did, I don't. I feel bad because I pushed them to a certain level, didn't really give them the guidance that I'd like to think that I've done for these teams. I would, some would argue those teams, weren't as talented or as deep as these teams now, and I think that's certainly the case. But I think that they could have gotten a little bit better guidance, certainly from me. Um, how to handle adverse situations. These things that I didn't really learn. Um, yeah, it's not ever solved on the chalkboard. It just not, and that's what I wanted to do. And you can't always hammer harder to solve the puzzle. So, um, you know, the moments after winning the 2018 national championship, two guys that were on my first recruiting class, Greg Duboff and Tyler Castano, were in the first row of Gillette there, and I went to see those guys. And those guys they are forever Yale Lacrosse diehard guys. But their senior year, they went 4-10. And there were some really regrettable moments for me as a leader. Um, that I wish I did a better job. For them. And I don't. I think about it all the time. It's I don't think I'll ever live down. But just see those guys, and they're up a number of feet, so I couldn't give them a hug, but just to make sure they understood how much I cared about them. And it's, if you look at our practice plan, Mark, from you know March 10th, before they canceled the season this year, you will see some of the same drills that you'll see in you know the fall of 2004 or whatever. And I'm sure when you played for me, you guys probably joked around about it, like, oh, we're going to do this drill again, or we're going to do that. It's the cookbook is pretty much the same, but I think that the way we've gone about it is a little bit different, and I think a little bit more. I don't know. I think that just understanding, helping guys fight through adversity, like a loss, or you know maybe a couple losses. I think that those are things that I've learned, that it'd be great to go back in time and say, listen, here's how you do it. And
Yeah.
once again, it's really hard because you lose a game and you're like,
Yeah.
hey, if we just really prepare for Princeton this week, you know what I mean? Um,
Absolutely.
it's your first reaction is like, we have to win this game,
Right.
but you got to ignore it. And I still have that. I mean, I
Sure.
tell the guys now, we lose a game this year, and my first thought is we're not going to win another game this season. And it gets really difficult to say, okay, we have to win this game. We have to prepare for this team. And you got to be like, no, that's not the case. We just got to get better. Just got to get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's amazing how if you can resist that temptation to prepare for your opponent, it's to this day. So as much success as I've had with it, I still fight it every single
Right.
time. It's
Right.
amazing.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's common, even outside of coaching. Doubt is something that we wake up with every single day. And how do you fight that doubt is by preparation. One of the things that's coming to mind here is like, how do you not flip the script and go, okay, what worked this week is just not going to work next week, and we need to change everything? How do you resist that urge, or what do you know to keep, or how how many new drills do you throw in per week, or does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, well, the way we plan practice is I map it out over the course of the year, and we look at what we need, what are our deficiencies, what are we, where are we weak, how do we shore up our weaknesses, and it could be transition defense, it could be whatever, and you can attest to this, and not a lot of people believe this when I tell them, but we don't spend a ton of time on 6 and 6, and we don't have more than a couple clears and one or two rides, and our offenses are pretty simple and defenses are relatively simple. So the install is not something that's going to take time, and that's something that helps us, um, over the course of that week. So if we're just shoring up fundamentals of how you play within, this system, then that makes it a little bit easier. If we don't have to put in another clear,
Mm-hmm.
I think that helps a great deal.
Yeah.
But for us, we'll look at, okay, we were great here. Your junior year is a really good example because we were great in the beginning of the year, and then we had a dip. We lost 2 games in the middle of the year, and we'd kind of lost our way a little bit, and it was more just missed details. I think over the course of that were everything had kind of lost its shine a little bit. It wasn't like one glaring problem. So, but your senior year, we look back at, okay, when were we at our peak? And we looked at the drills that we did leading up to that, because I had them kind of mapped out, and said, okay, these are the things that we want to do to get us kind of in the right position to play at a high level. And then your senior year, we start out 10-0. I think we were, number one in the country for a little while. So I think very often we look back and said, okay, when we played Team X in this week, we were awesome at this. We played really well. Like, why? What did we do for that? And we can look back. I mean, I've got every practice plan for the last 18 years in an Excel document that I can pull up any day, tell you the depth chart of that day. I can tell you the time of the drill. And that's one of the reasons why when I say a drill is going to be 4 minutes, it's got to be 4 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I want to be able to say, okay, either it worked or it didn't. If I get variable in the week, then once the game comes and we play a certain way, be it poorly or we play well, I can't look back and I can't rely on what we did in practice as the amount of time we put into certain things, because I got crazy and decided, you know what, let's just play a little 6-on-6. So if we tweak it,
Yeah.
you
Makes
say,
sense.
hey man, you guys just going to scrimmage. You guys have been great. Let's just scrimmage. You guys have fun with it. I have to go
Right.
back and revise the document.
Yeah. That's a
Does
really
that make
No,
sense?
it makes a lot of sense. I still remember the times where I'm with Coach Baxter on a defensive drill, and you're like, "Change it now,"
Yeah.
and Bax just wants to go through 1 or 2 more reps, and you're no now, right? And I think that you're shedding light onto it now as to why it was so important to change the drill, because
Yep.
that 1 or 2 more reps is not going to change everything.
You got to talk to Bax, not his head coach, because he knows that he's a time stealer, and it's like he said to me, he's like, I'd never realized. I'm like, yeah, dude, you gotta make sure that it's down to the minute, and
Mhm.
anything you steal, you got to pay back. You got to figure it out. And so when Stim will say, I can get it in this many minutes, and he'll say, I can get it in 5 minutes. I'm gonna say, you need to get it in two, and he'll spend the whole day trying to figure out how he's going to install it in 2 minutes. So
That's so good.
yeah,
And there's a lot of things that need to happen beforehand, right? You have to have their attention, and they have to be on the spot
no
and
doubt.
be able to go from one thing to the next. What the one thing that's coming up that younger coaches can listen to our conversation and is the less chalk talk, more trust building, and getting fundamentally sound rather than focusing so much on the scouting report and all that. What advice would you give to an aspiring student athlete or younger lacrosse player that's often overlooked right before they get into a high intensity college atmosphere?
Uh, I think that for us, I think that we get a lot of mileage out of guys who love to play.
Mm,
And I think that you need to love the game to play, not even in Division 1, in college, because college coaches are paid. Nowadays they're paid full time to make sure their teams are the best in their conference or one of the best in the country. And I think that they will you know place those expectations on the kids. So um, I think we're very careful not to recruit guys, or we try as best we can not to recruit guys who don't absolutely love playing. You know what I
right.
mean? And the way we do things, Mark. If you don't love, like, you can not love the weight room, but you better like it, or you're going to get hurt, and then you're not going to be able to love playing. So
Right. It's
you got to
true.
be able to go through that process as well. Um, so I mean, I think that there's plenty of kids out there, and maybe it's the culture of our sport, that don't understand how much they don't really love the game.
Mm,
I mean, if you're completely obsessed with it and you love playing it more than anything else, um, then it should all work out for you. I think that
right.
that's something that it'll come back to you. But you know, when I played, I just love playing. I love playing more than anything. I would play, drive 9 hours for a club game. You know what I mean? After college, and play 3 summer games, a night. If just bring a jersey and hop on and play. You know what I mean? I was like one of those guys.
Right.
But I just loved it, and I think that that's the type of guy that we need to get, a guy who just can't put a stick down,
Right.
because it's going to be, if it feels like work at any point in time, you're not going to get the most out of it.
And I think it might be a silly analogy, but I love to use it in the fact that I always like to talk about, whenever I'm talking about love for your craft, I use a plant analogy, because if this plant was growing and you're looking to water it and give it sun and all these different things, but it doesn't love the game, then you have to say, we're going no matter what. And you end up pulling it out of the ground, and it washes away because it just doesn't have the stem to
Right.
with that's just the love of the game, to show up, to want more and to give more, to be okay with being pushed, right? And in the different ways that you see fit to nurture that, right? So I think that's so important. Not only having a competitive fire to be challenged and want to be challenged and want to be in competition, but you just have to love if it's lacrosse, the stick, you have to love the ball if it's a different sport and all
Right.
that.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it.
So, how similar or different are you as a coach versus a parent? Right? Do you use a lot of your coaching style in parenting?
My wife tells me to stop being a coach and yelling at the guys, yelling at my sons. I yell at my sons. I don't yell at my daughter. My daughter could get away with anything, if she wanted. So she's
That's
just
that
anything she wants.
that's the fuzzy 5-on-4 drill. That's what that is.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
definitely a fuzzy one. I'm probably a little too similar, but I talk to my kids about the compound effect. That's how all of my kids learned to ride a bike, with the compound effect. And I told them, like, this is gonna, it doesn't feel like you're getting any better,
Hmm.
but in, like, you know 5 or 6 days, you're going to be riding the bike, and there's tears and skin knees and all that stuff. And to this day, like, I'll say to my older sons, who are 13 and 12 right now, um, anything that they're working on, it's, just do a little, a lot, not a lot, a little,
A
because
100%.
that's what's going to get you to the point where there's enough mastery, where there's enjoyment.
Yeah.
um, so, uh, it's probably, it falls upon deaf ears. I think with sometimes my boys realize that I'm a little too coached and not enough father. But I also look at it like, the way my father was. He was a coach, and he was really hard on me. So, you know maybe that's where it comes from.
Right. I think all my longtime clients, my family, my friends, I'll just blurt out what's the most powerful thing in the world when I see them getting frustrated, and they say momentum back to me, and that's the compound effect, right? Because you can be so mad in the moment, but then maybe you need to focus on Andy Shay sticking to the process, right? Because if you allow the compound effect to come into play, if you allow a belief in the momentum to do a little a lot rather than a lot a little, you're going to be in a good place. So outside your immediate family and your close friends, what resources like the compound effect do you turn to for insight, information, or inspiration?
I read a fair amount. Um, my attention span is not great, so I read bits of books, put them down, and pick them up again. So, um, there's a there's a book, once again harkening back to your junior year, that spring break, um, team room incident, where the only time I walked out of practice in my entire career.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
Remember that?
Oh
The
yeah.
But I think there's a book called "Ego is the Enemy," which I think is just phenomenal. And I think that I don't know when that book was written, but I feel like that was something that, in that moment, that was what I think it's Ryan Halliday is the one who wrote it. I think I have it here somewhere, but um, I think that's the biggest part of, for us, our progress as a team, is that, we spend this time all year, especially, when it's in a spring sport, you go from fall to the spring trying to get better. And then you get better and you get success. You know what I mean? You beat a good team. Um,
Hmm.
for, let's say, Yale, for instance, this year is, we beat Penn State, but didn't clear the ball well, didn't played pretty sloppy, had a bunch of turnovers, and didn't really kind of self analyze, like, what we were doing well, or, we just saw that we won, and it was a big, I think it was 1 versus 2 or whatever, 1 versus 3 or whatever it was. It was a national TV game. Um, and then we go out against UMass, who's a very good team, and we didn't really look back and say, okay, we can't clear the ball that well. Why can't we clear the ball that well? And
Hmm.
we tried, as you know, we probably tried, but without a loss, without being fueled by a loss, and this is one of the things I really still struggle with. We can't. I don't do a good enough job of correcting that stuff. And our egos were writing checks that our play couldn't cash. Let's put it that way. So
Right.
we go out against UMass and just get blasted 11-3 at halftime, and the final is 13-11. But certainly didn't afford them enough respect, to even play with them
Right.
for most of the game. Turned
Yeah.
the ball over almost every time, and just thought that we were great. And
Right.
the thing that's great about Division I lacrosse, at least in 2020, or right now, these days, so to speak, is that everybody's good, and that's what sucks too. Like, everybody's really good,
Yeah.
and it's really difficult. You can't just roll the ball out against any team, in Division I, and say we're gonna beat these guys. And UMass certainly a top 15, top 10 team. So, I'm not even talking about them necessarily, but in that moment, they just absolutely blasted us back to earth. And um, you just want to be able to say that ego won't get in the way. But even armed with that, and even though I'm constantly telling guys that, it just always creeps back in, and you end up just doing things a little bit less perfect than you did before.
Right.
Your junior year, we started out 5-0. We beat Maryland. Bryant was a quarterfinal team the year before. Fairfield was an NCAA team 2 years before. Let's see who else is on there. Who else did we beat? Another. There was 5 games that we thought that they were 50-50 or worse, and we started
Mm-hmm.
out 5-0 because we spent the whole year worried about going 0-5. And then we played Cornell and we're just going to beat them because we're awesome, and we weren't awesome. We didn't know any better. We just we got beat. So those are the things that whole how that always unfolds. You see it coming a mile away, and I try and stop it, but nothing that comes out of my mouth is as impactful as a loss.
Yeah,
Um,
I was just about to ask. I mean, it's certainly a fact that it's the best team never wins is the team that plays better. I mean, you have no
right.
idea what's going to happen on any given day. I remember watching the last game. The goalie played well. There's a bunch of different factors that go into a game, but a question for you is what that came to mind while you were speaking is: do you think you guys win in 2018 if you guys don't have that loss in the Ivy Finals?
I, I was texting with a couple of those seniors very recently, and to a man, they say that if we don't lose to Cornell in the Ivy Finals, we don't win the national championship.
No chance. I
And
don't think any.
it's amazing to think, and it's. I tell you that was the worst selection show I've ever been a. I shouldn't say that. It wasn't the worst selection show, but it was the worst selection show at Yale that I've ever been a part of. The worst one ever was a 2001 UMass team got snubbed, so that was the worst experience I've had in watching a selection show. But in 2018, we had drove back to New York, and it was everybody was embarrassed. Everybody was angry at each other. Um, we were rock bottom as a unit. You know what I mean? Um,
Hmm.
and we watched the show, and we did it at Box 63 or something like that. In typical fashion, that they didn't know we were coming. There was like we're supposed to have it catered and all this stupid stuff, and there's nothing there. You know what I mean? It was just
Good,
another
good.
flaw, another deep missed detail somewhere. You know what I mean? Um, and I was just angry, and everyone's angry, and they announced where we were, and we were like, okay. And guys, you know how that is. Normally, you get your team that you're playing, and then you high five, and you're all psyched, and you're like, let's go. Everybody's happy. We got that. We're playing UMass, which I wasn't happy about because Greg Cannella is a mentor of mine, and it didn't feel like we knew it was going to be difficult for multiple reasons. I wasn't psyched to play them, but everyone just left saying we better get to work or we're just going to get crushed.
Yeah.
And of all the years I've been in the playoffs, it was the best. It's so uncomfortable. It's so difficult. You know what I mean? But it was the best uh, launching pad for that team.
Yeah.
Everybody, there wasn't one guy left with a smile on their face. It was
Yeah.
awesome and awful. In the moment, it's awful, but looking
Yeah.
back on it, it was awesome.
And it's so interesting. You talking about ego is the enemy, and then talking about the missed details that were going on after that loss, like the like nothing be set up at box 63. I mean, and then you fast forward and you get the details right, and you get back to who Yale Lacrosse is all about, and then you reach for and you attain the pinnacle. You win the national championship, and coach, you've won several Ivy League championships. To this day, what keeps you going to stay at Yale, to coach with the same and even greater passion? What keeps you going?
Uh, I don't know. I think it's last year was very tricky, and to be perfectly honest, it was a um I don't know if I did navigate it as well as I could have, but it was definitely there was self reflection early in the year, because we spent all the fall getting pats on the back and all this stuff, and everybody, all the preseason hype, and I wasn't ready. I didn't think I was my batteries were fully charged on Feb 1 of 2019. And I think it went the same for the guys. There was less hunger. And not devoid of it by any means, but it honestly worried me, like in the moment, like, okay, I'm not running full speed headlong into February 1st, like I normally am.
Yeah.
And I could put my finger on, I could theorize that, once you win the national championship, you win it every day until the start of the new season, because everybody's
Mhm.
looking for content, and everybody wants to talk about it. And it's like, hey, you won it. Hey, great job again. And, you as a human, you're like, you know, you shake someone's hand to meet them, and it's like, you almost expect them to say congratulations right away.
Right.
Um, you're like, yeah, hey, thank you. Like, for what? Oh, you didn't say congratulations? I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
it's I don't know whatever that is. It's 8 months of that, and it's at Yale. We hadn't won it ever, so it's like it's a little bit of a sexier story. So it's
Mhm.
there was a lot of that, and then we get TD transfers in, and then there's all this hype, like, oh, this team and blah blah blah, and so that softens your edge, man. Talk about ego as the enemy. You have a constant assault on your ego. So I don't know if I was fully charged, and there was a little bit less of a. It was just a little different, going into that 2019 season, um, and then coaching that team. Those kids, those poor kids, felt. We lose to Villanova the first game. Every time we won a game, didn't matter who we beat. It felt like a relief.
Yeah, deep breath.
It was amazing. It was really amazing. It was very difficult. And I'd said that I don't really feel pressure, but after coaching the team and having them see how they reacted, it, I could feel the pressure that they felt. So I spent the
Mhm.
year trying to pull it off of them.
Yeah.
It was an amazing, amazing learning experience. I mean, there was one point in time where we won an Ivy game, and I forgot we were singing. Like, I didn't get the guy. The guys were like, "Are you coming?" And I'm like, it had totally. I don't know what game it was, but it was not an. It was like it was. Might have been Cornell, maybe. No, we lost. Well, no, it was Cornell, and I had totally forgotten.
Yeah.
And that's a big. That's a moment. You know what I mean? That
I mean, coach, I'm my freshman year in 2013, I was in tears when we won at Cornell against Princeton, and then my senior year, I don't want to say I was emotionless, but there wasn't as much vigor in my voice. That's for sure
took it
when
for
you were
granted.
singing.
You,
I don't know what it was. It was it taking it for granted, or it was. See, I didn't win a national championship like you did, but it's that all learning is about is going from a state of consciously competence where you have to think and then act to unconscious competence where you don't have to think and you can act. But that had been your first national championship, so you're just like, okay, I have to think about how I act. You're back to
right.
stage 3, right? And that by through my 4 years, I had reached unconscious competence in winning an Ivy title, right? 3 out of 4. It's almost
Right.
like that expected. And then I the only new land for me, right? I felt like I was lost. We were lost in the national tournament because we hadn't been there before. And then that's the most important thing about winning is knowing how to do it. Looking back and saying, "Oh, what are the strategies to get going?" And I guess the question that circles back to this 2019 season is like a team of lambs led by a lion will always defeat a team of lions led by a lamb, right? So what did you do to get that hunger back, to get them driving back in the right direction?
Yeah. And I don't want to. I don't want to paint a picture that I was slumped and you know depressed going out to practice. It was a marginal. I just felt it. I felt a little bit. I didn't. I guess I just didn't. I didn't. It was just something in the back of my mind. You know what I mean?
Mm,
It
sure.
was. I don't think it. I don't think it was palpable by anybody else. I just kind of, you know, I tried to behave the same way. But it you know, those, I think a big part of what helped us last year was losing a pen twice. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And that was a big factor. The first time, you know, it was down there. It was overtime, and the second time was in the Ivy tournament, and then we had to basically hand them both trophies. The course of the year, which is something that didn't sit very well with me or any of those other guys. So playing them in the quarterfinals, to get to the Final Four, it wasn't hard to rev guys up for that one at all.
no.
And I think it's important to note, and my wife observes this, is that going into this season, I couldn't have. I hoped September 1st was February 1st. Like I
Mm,
really, it had come back tenfold for the 20 season. You know what I mean? Because I was just, the 19 was behind us. Granted, I would love to have won that last game in 19, but it was a lot on those guys, and it was a
yeah.
lot. As someone that would like to protect them and help them, I didn't know if I did the best job of doing that. Everything rushed back in 20. It was like, as soon as September, as soon as, honestly, as August came around, I was like, I would love to start the season right now and
Mhm.
just get after it. And of course, you can't do that. Um, and you got to, part of the process is getting better over the course of the fall. But it was, for whatever my batteries were charged for 19, it was way more for 20. And I would love to have a handle on that and understand why and be able to control that.
Right.
I don't. I don't have
No.
any experience with it,
Right.
you know.
It's almost like
So
you want to mimic the losses of the Cornell Ivy Championship just so that you can win again. It's so hard to mimic the losses because everybody's well aware that the practice is totally different than a
totally.
real life game, right? So you can't just mimic a loss in a practice because everybody's like, okay, we lost in practice, but it's not a game, right? So it's very hard to get to that. And where I would like to wrap up this conversation is we're hovering over it, I believe, right? You've been coaching and leading student athletes for such a long time, as well as looking for ways to develop yourself as a coach, as a parent, as a person. What would your definition of greatness be? How would you define greatness?
Oh, jeez. Greatness. I don't know. So that's pretty. That's pretty broad. I think that you know. I think that I think it's important to understand that I do what I love. More than I'm doing what I think I was meant to do because I strived to do this. I've spent a lot of my adult life not making enough money to get by. Um, and I did it because all I wanted to do was coach lacrosse. Working odd jobs, making no money back at the University of Delaware or junior college and University of Massachusetts, and now I'm making a living coaching this game, and it's incredible. I think that for me, I'm doing what I wanted to do, and I never worried about the money. You know what I mean? Um, and I think that has allowed me to be successful. Is that the definition of greatness? No, but I think that I feel like I can approach being successful or being very good at this because I absolutely love doing it.
Mm.
And I say it like that because talking to my son the other day, who's got some interest in lacrosse. He really likes wrestling. He loves paleontology more than anything.
Hmm.
Loves it. And I say to him, Logan, you want to be great at what you do what you love. And so don't think for a second, like, lacrosse is not the family business. Like, I can only imagine how hard it is for him to go out to his youth game, you know what I mean? And his father's the Yale lacrosse coach. On the heels of a let's say we have a big win and his buddies are talking about the game, and he cares a little bit, but he doesn't live it, breathe it, and love it.
Sure.
Um, you know, meanwhile, if there's something to do with dinosaurs or whatever, he just absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
That's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And that may change. I wanted to be a scientist when I was a young kid too. Um, but the point is, once you figure out what you want to do, grab it, run with it as fast as you can, and enjoy it, and don't worry about the money. I mean, I think that that's a big part of it. Is that unless you get yourself in a position where you have to support a few people, in your 20s, then take your time to do what you want to do. And I've shared this with you, as you know. So um, I think that doesn't answer your question, I'm sure, but that's
It absolutely answers my question, Coach. I mean,
well,
you're right on top of it. I think, you bringing up Logan, lacrosse is the world of lacrosse, and what you've done with the Yale lacrosse program is like swallowing the sun when it comes to a younger kid that wants to play lacrosse at a very high level. And I think it all circles back to the through line that we've been talking about. If you love the stick, if you love the game, and then you have to just love your craft, then you're giving yourself the best possible chance at greatness. So, I mean, you absolutely answered the question. The fact that, maybe it's the simple striving for dealing with the lack of money and the lack of resources and the lack of
right.
support even along the way, and just still finding your way just because of love.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you know your people are going to make sacrifices to do certain things, and that's I think all my college friend or high school friends, we were very close, and they all have different jobs, different walks of life at this point. We spent our 20s, or they did, enjoying themselves and having real jobs and being able to do things, and they'd go to Vegas and Ireland, like, guys would. I couldn't, because I couldn't afford it. And you know now they're kind of looking, they all now travel to Yale lacrosse games and watch Yale lacrosse games, and they're huge fans, and they're just like, I wish I had a job like yours. I'm like, you do when we win, but you probably don't want it when we lose. So
Yeah.
just
Well,
making sacrifices at the right time, probably.
absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Coach, and I appreciate you taking the sacrifice and investing the love of the game and the love for your players like me. And, it doesn't go unnoticed. A lot of, the guys in my class, I'm speaking on behalf of them, and all the guys in Yale lacrosse. We look up to you as a father figure. You were a huge influence in our life, and, we're so proud to be a part of the Yale lacrosse program.
Thanks, brother. You're a proud representative, man. I appreciate you. So thank you.